Welcome back to episode number 26 of Winning the Division. I am your co-host, Ryan Smith, alongside my pal, former NFL tight end Benjamin Troupe, who played for the Oakland Raiders at the time, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Tennessee Titans. Our guest tonight, as you can see on the screen, he is at Spark Scouting, NFL draft writer and analyst for draftprofessor.com and the Wrightway Sports Network. He is Mr. Bill Sparks, also a Cleveland Browns fan. Bill, how's it going today?
You know, it is going good. I'm here with you guys talking some, NFL draft with the Super Bowl in the rearview mirror. It's my big season. Things are ramping up. We've got the combine in a couple of weeks, and the NFL draft season is taking off. And this is like my Christmas, right? You know, I spend all fall watching college prospects, trying to project where they're going to go. And now that the season's over, we have a more clear picture of what teams are going to do or not do as we start to, ramp up into draft season. So I'm excited. I don't know about you guys, but I'm excited for this one.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and start, Bill, with the draft. We'll get into the Super Bowl, in a little bit, but just for starting off the top, just tell us what you do with a draft professor on the Wrightway Sports Network, and kind of as a draft analyst, what does that entail? And then just kind of some of your findings as we kind of inch our way to the 2025 NFL draft here in about 2 months.
Yeah, so with the Wrightway Sports Network at twsn.net and the draft professors over on YouTube, my whole goal is analyzing the draft class top to bottom. So this is my 10th year of being an NFL draft analyst, watching prospects, grading prospects on tape. One thing I like to do is give NFL comparisons to current prospects, kind of gives people a bird's eye view of what they're going to get from an NFL prospect. And from there, I'll grade them, rank them on my big board. I'd have positional rankings of each individual position and then an overall big board as well. So right now on my big board, currently there's over 400 prospects that I've watched, graded, comped out. The big thing about this year's class is it's not going to be star laden at the top. It's got probably 4 to 5 blue chip talents that you're going to find. And then, probably another 14 or 15 guys that you would take in the first round of an NFL draft. But right about 25, 26th pick in the draft, you're going to see from there to about pick 75, a lot of the guys are going to be similarly graded. So it's going to be like going to Baskin Robbins. What's your favorite flavor type of guy when you look at that? So I think you're going to see NFL teams, especially in the first round on Thursday night, as we start to get towards the back half of round one, start to kind of jumble around, jump up for guys, jump back for guys, just because they're going to have different grades on their board. Obviously, the sexier positions, quarterback, left tackle, this is not really the year to need those positions. There's 2 guys that are often talked about at the top, Cam Ward from Miami and Shedeur Sanders from Colorado. But after that it's a coin toss on what you prefer at a quarterback. Do you want a high ceiling guy like Jalen Milroe from Alabama? Do you want a more polished product like Kyle McCord from Syracuse? Are you in love with a gunslinger style like Jackson Dart? So that's kind of what you're getting in this class. The cool part about that is obviously once we get towards that middle end part of round one, we're going to see different names of different guys. It's going to be very unpredictable. So I'm very excited for that. And all in all, it should be a pretty deep class. Last year, you kind of had a lot of guys at the top, but when you started to get towards round 3 and 4, the talent level kind of tailed off a bit. This year is going to be the exact opposite. You don't have that talent at the top, but it's going to be very deep going into day 3, round 4, 5, 6, even in round 7, you're going to get guys who can be contributors in the league on, day 1.
And Bill, even sticking with that, I mean, we always talk about, when you talk about the draft, nothing affects the draft more than the current crop of quarterbacks, running backs. Mm-hmm. Jalen Hurts, I mean, I know we're going to get to him. He wins the Super Bowl. He was nobody's favorite when he gets drafted in the second round by Philly. We understand that. How much has he helped? We understand Shedeur. We understand Cam. You mentioned a Jackson Dart. I don't know where a Dylan Gabriel would end up in because of how much has a guy like Jalen Hurts, who's shown, I'm not going to be first team all pro good, but efficient. I'm going to be about as efficient because Patrick Mahomes' best winning percentage since he come into the league. Number 2, that will be Jalen Hurts. How much does a Brock Purdy, even though he is the anomaly of anomalies, But maybe like a guy like Jalen Hurts, who actually finished the job. How does he help those second tier quarterbacks who's not going to be like top drafted guys?
Yeah, so I think Hurts definitely helped a lot of those mid-round guys like the Jalen Milroe, the Jackson Darts, because what Philly did was they said, hey, we're going to take Jalen Hurts, right? But we have Carson Wentz. Jalen Hurts is going to give us something different that we don't currently have. Yeah, Wentz was a mobile guy, but he gave a different dynamic to that offense. So if I'm a team looking in the draft and I have a quarterback right now that I'm not necessarily in love with, or I have a bridge quarterback or a veteran, and maybe I see a Jalen Milroe type of guy who needs some refinement, but man, he's got athleticism. I can design all these runs and I can build an offense around him. Same thing for like even, a Will Howard type of guy. He's got the mechanics, he's got skill sets, and I can build something around him. I think NFL franchises are going to look to emulate that and say, I understand that positional value is important. And I understand that, I have a third round grade on this guy, but if I'm sitting there at the top of the second and he's my guy, you got to go get him. I talked about it in the lead up to the Super Bowl. You look at like Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes. There's stories out there of Brett Veach being enamored with Mahomes as early as 2015, like his freshman year. He said, this is my guy. I got to go get him. And, when you're an NFL GM and you're in that position as a talent evaluator, positional value is important, right? If you have a 6th round grade on a guy and you take him in round 2, it's probably not the best value. But if you're sitting there top of round 3 and you have 2 similarly graded prospects, but one is your guy, you go get him. You go get him and you take him regardless of what the rest of the league says. That, hey, I'm going to take this Jalen Milroe and I'm going to build my offense around him and I'm going to work on his weaknesses. And in 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, maybe he's getting us to that Jalen Hurts level. Maybe he's that Super Bowl MVP that we're looking for. But you've got to have the conviction to say, this is my guy. I'm going to go get him.
So, obviously, Ashton Jeanty is going to be the number 1 running back taken. Saquon Barkley, what he did he is in a class all by himself, him and Derrick Henry. Mm-hmm. But everybody kept thinking, oh man, these running backs, man, you just playing plug guys. I don't want to say the NFL has turned the corner, but are we back to, hey man, you still got elite guys, and if they are elite, you take them in the first round.
So I will tell you from my perspective as an analyst, I am the type of person that Ashton Jeanty is a blue chip prospect for me. He's my number 4 overall player in this class, regardless of positional value. In a year, he goes top 10. Because he's a running back, is he going to slide down some people's boards? Absolutely. I think he goes top 10. The other part about that, though, this year is this running back class is so deep. This running back class, I have 36 draftable talents at running back. On average, you see probably 17 to 18 go. This class is deep enough to where if I take an Ashton Jeanty in round 1, or I take an Omarion Hampton in round 2, and I come back in rounds 4 or 5 and I take another guy, nobody's going to fault me for that. But I think when you look at what Philly did with Saquon Barkley and what Baltimore did with Derrick Henry, NFL teams are going to say, we can do that if we take an Ashton Jeanty, or if we take an Omarion Hampton from UNC, or even a Caleb Johnson from Iowa. But also it goes back, relating back to the quarterback class, if I have a quarterback that needs work or needs help in an offense, the best way I can help him is to give him a solid running game. Take the pressure, take the ball out of his hands, take the pressure off him 30, 35 snaps a game, and you look at teams like, Las Vegas, who may be out on the quarterback race. Maybe they don't get one of those top guys. Take Ashton Jeanty, take 30, 35 snaps a game that's out of that quarterback's hands. So that's one of the big things you can do to help your young quarterback is take a solid running back talent in this class.
Yeah. Let's get into kind of the minutia a little bit, and you can go as deep as you want to go with this. Let's just start at the top. We'll get to your Browns in a second, but let's just start with the Titans. Ben played for the Titans. He knows them well. You got Will Levis there, and he's meh, as some people say. He's there. Mm-hmm. They don't have to take a quarterback. Some people said they might trade down, and someone might trade up and take a quarterback at 1.
They have to take one. They might not do it.
Okay, all right. Well,
they need to take one.
Bill, what do you think the Titans should do?
Whatever adjective, throw it in there. They need one bad.
Do they draft an Abdul Cardi at 1? Do they draft a Travis Hunter instead of taking the quarterback? Or does someone pay them a king's ransom to come up, like, say, the Raiders, like you just mentioned?
Yep. So that's how I would play it. I'm with Ben in that you cannot go into next season with Will Levis as your starter, your locked in starter. You got to give him some form of competition. Is that form of competition a Cam Ward or a Shedeur Sanders? I would say no. I would say that's not necessarily the best use of resources. You're picking there at number one. You're clearly lacking in talent across the roster. I would do everything I can. I would be standing out on the streets of Nashville with one of those big billboard signs that says we are open for business and we will take all offers, and try to sell that pick, to a Las Vegas, to a New York Jets, to sell that pick, go down to 6 or 7, get an additional first round talent next year as well, and try to build that team around Will Levis and the veteran quarterback that you bring in to compete with him. If you stick and pick at 1, the conversation becomes quarterback versus Carter versus Hunter. Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter for me are the 2 of the other 4 blue chip prospects that I've talked about. So Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Ashton Jeanty, Mason Graham. Those are my 4 blue chip talents that would be a top 10 pick in any other year. So the question becomes, how well does this new regime, Mike Borgonzi, Brian Callahan, value those blue chip talents versus a quarterback? If I'm a betting man and I'm sitting here today, if they go quarterback, they're going to go Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado. And here's why. Shedeur Sanders is very surgical and accurate with his throws. I mean, he's the career completion percentage leader in college football with almost 72% completion. He's accurate. Brian Callahan, coming from Cincinnati, he values that accuracy. He's not so much sold on a guy with a big arm and very athletic, makes the flashy plays. That's why I think he doesn't like Will Levis, because Will Levis plays that hero ball, big splashy tile play. The other part of it, the NFL's a business. The Titans are trying to raise money for a new stadium. How do you do that? Bring in the son of Deion Sanders, because you can't tell me at that point Deion won't throw on a Titans jersey now and again for his son, and that's going to sell some PSLs. So that's the business side of it. From a football perspective, it'd be Shedeur Sanders if they go quarterback. If they don't, I would take Abdul Carter. We saw what an edge rush does for a team when we saw Philly and Kansas City last night. Obviously Vic Fangio didn't bring pressure, but imagine if Vic Fangio had an Abdul Carter on his defensive line. Imagine that against Kansas City's offensive line. I think the conversation has to be that you have to try to trade out. You have to. If you don't get an offer you like, you stick and pick and you take Abdul Carter. Would I fault them for taking the quarterback? No, because then that means they're saying, hey, we have the conviction to say Shedeur Sanders is our guy and we're going to stick by him. But ultimately, I try to trade out first.
Yeah. And then my other one is your Cleveland Browns at number 2, and we can kind of segue this in, and I'll kind of give you the floor. I'm sure Ben will have a retort on this as well. Okay, so your Cleveland Browns, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, those are the only picks. Like you said, whatever the Titans don't pick, maybe in that scenario, if they go non-quarterback. And then, so what are your feelings on your Browns at 2? And then we can kind of segue that into your kind of thoughts too. I'll just kind of let you have the floor. You're wearing a Myles Garrett jersey. We see it on the screen. So we can just kind of segue that into your Myles Garrett thoughts, as a fan, as an analyst, and kind of everything in between. So let's start with the draft portion. Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, somebody else, and then kind of in your own words, your thoughts on the Myles Garrett long-term in Cleveland. Will they trade him? Will they budge? Or is he really going to try to force his way out?
Right. So first off, from a draft perspective, I think if you're the Cleveland Browns, the best selection for you would be Travis Hunter, just because, he's a generational prospect. He's played both sides of the ball, right? This is a guy you could put as a full-time cornerback and give him snaps as a wide receiver. Obviously, with Elijah Moore as a free agent, you're going to have a big opening in the slot that you can put Travis Hunter in. If you want to do it the opposite way, you can put Travis Hunter as the full-time wide receiver opposite Jerry Jeudy. And then now you have a slot cornerback that you can use in certain third down scenarios. The other conversation is, do they go a quarterback? I think if they do, it's going to be Shedeur Sanders. And the reason why, Deion has had nothing but glowing reviews about Bill Musgrave, and Bill Musgrave was just promoted as the Browns quarterback coach. So there's that connection. Obviously there's the rumors will Dion let his son play for the Cleveland Browns? I think he will. And not to say that Dion's going to block anybody. I think he will, because Dion is the type of guy, and you know, we've seen it. He's the type of guy that accepts a challenge. Shadur's the type of guy that accepts a challenge. What bigger challenge is out there than being the quarterback savior for the Cleveland Browns, who haven't been able to get it right since 1999? There isn't one. You come into Cleveland and you win a playoff game like Baker Mayfield did. You're a hero. There's still people that talk about Baker in Cleveland today. Imagine if he goes in there and wins a couple playoff games. So I think the conversation is either Travis Hunter or one of these quarterbacks, probably Shadur Sanders if they fall in love with him. Now the Myles Garrett piece. From a fan, I understand completely where Myles is coming from. You've been on a team since 2017 that just has not been able to get it right, aside from a couple years where Kevin Stefanski was the coach of the year. But from an offensive perspective, they just haven't been able to get it right. And you've been the cornerstone of this defense. You've had double-digit sacks since 2018. You have carried a defense. I understand completely. How you're going about it is the absolute wrong way to do it. Going into the media saying, hey, I want to be traded. I want out of here. I'm done. You know, I've met with management and I don't like the answers they've given. It's understandable. You can meet with the GM of a team, not like the answers you get. They've privately said, hey, we're not going to trade you. You going on Radio Row at the Super Bowl and having interviews about saying, I'll do whatever it takes to get out of here. That, number one, is going to make the Browns want to trade you even less, because now you've damaged the value that you can bring back. And an NFL team is going to want to recoup the most value if they move you. And number two, if I'm a team that's looking potentially to trade for you and I see you do that to your current employer, what makes me think that you won't do that to me in 2 or 3 years when I don't do the same? If I'm a Washington Commanders, if I'm Adam Peters and I'm watching you do that to the Browns on Radio Row, and then you come here with me and we miss the playoffs a year or two, what's to stop you from doing that? So while I understand from a fan perspective, from an analyst perspective, I think ultimately he has to be moved. And the reason I say that is this Browns team is more than a quarterback away. If they were one quarterback away, if Shadur Sanders would come in and they were good to go there, yeah, let's take Shadur, let's run this thing back. But the offensive line is aging. There's injuries up and down the offensive line. Joel Bitonio is discussing retirement. Jack Conklin has been injured. DeJuan Jones has been injured. The wide receiver core outside of Jerry Jeudy is young, hasn't emerged. The running back room, Nick Chubb's been banged up. Then Jerome Ford behind him. He's a really great running back too, but he's not your top tier guy. And that's just offensively. Defensively, you've got kind of the same conversation. A lot of aging veterans, a lot of cap heavy contracts that Andrew Berry does a great job of manipulating the cap, but ultimately it's going to catch up with you. We've seen that in New Orleans, right? You know, a lot of these older vets that they now have to 36, 37 years old, restructure their contracts just to get under the cap. So while I would hate it from a fan perspective, I understand him wanting out. I hate the fact that he's approached it this way. And I think ultimately it's going to end up him being moved.
One retort to that before Ben gets in. Well, what if the Browns say, Myles, you have been going about this the wrong way. We're not trading you. You're under contract for 2 more years. Sorry, buddy. You have 2 years of contract left. They're not guaranteed, but you're still under contract. What do you think he'll do? What do you think he'll do?
Honestly, I think he could either A, hold out, or B, walk away. I mean, this is a guy, he's already hit over 100 sacks in his career. He'd be looked on pretty favorably. Would it mean a Hall of Fame case? Absolutely not. But, you know, if he walked away tomorrow because the Browns wouldn't trade him, I don't think anybody would fault him for it, but he'd be looked at differently. You could tell, obviously, from a media perspective, they would run and say that he's walking away. He took his ball and went home is the big thing. So I think what he would likely do is probably hold out as long as he can. Because like you mentioned, there's no real guaranteed money. He's already been paid most of the money he's going to be guaranteed up front. He'd hold out as long as he can until he needed to start showing up. And then once he shows up long enough to get the contracts to toll, the big thing is, yes, he has 2 years left on his deal, but there's also an additional 2 years they could choose to franchise tag him. he would be here for another 4 years. And then by that point, he's 34, 35 years old. Yes, Von Miller got a major deal from Buffalo up and around that age, but what other teams are going to be willing to pay top dollar money to him? And I think if I'm the Browns, after watching the Super Bowl last night, I'm thinking his value's never been higher, because we saw on the grand stage what a good defensive line can do for a team. It completely shut Patrick Mahomes out of the game. So if I'm doing that, I'm saying, hey, look, we got Myles Garrett over here. He's had double-digit sacks every year since 2018. He can be had for a couple of first-round picks. He's all yours. He's got a deal that has no guaranteed money on it. Yes. Do you have to re-sign him to an extension? Yes. But you could just as easily backload that extension, still get him on the cheap guaranteed deal for at least 2 or 3 years, and worry about that line and kick that can down the road.
And Bill, this new way of trying to negotiate on Radio Row or through the media or through social media, you see Myles Garrett, you see Deebo Samuel. I mean, you got guys that saying, look, I can see that my time is coming to an end. Either one, I don't fit this offense anymore if I'm Deebo, which I don't know how many offenses he actually does fit when you look at the way type of player he is. There aren't many players in life that can rush the passer like Myles Garrett. That goes without saying. But as you mentioned before, the business of football is bigger than anybody. I don't care who you are. And do you think, damn it, because here's the thing, bigger than the Browns, Coach Stefanski, hell of a coach. People kept saying, Browns will let him go. He would have been unemployed for 2 minutes and somebody would have snatched him up. What does it, how does Coach Stefanski go about his superstar player behind the scenes saying, Myles, you know I love you, right? You know I appreciate you. But you are making life really, really hard on us, and we trying to deal you because, one, you want to get dealt, but you want to go to a playoff contender, quote, good team. How much stress is Myles going to put on that front office? Because perception is reality when it comes to the league, whether the business is. How much stress do you think he's put on himself and that the front office saying, yeah, we know you're getting a 4-team All-Pro, but we don't know what type of attitude he got now or what type of attitude he's actually bringing to your franchise.
Exactly that. And Kevin Stefanski, the rumors that are out there was this started, Myles Garrett met with the team. He didn't like the direction they were going to take. And then that's when he requested the trade. The pushback is that what was the direction that was presented to you and how has that changed in the last 3 weeks? Is it that they told you that they're years off from contending and you don't want to do it anymore? Okay, that's understandable. But again, like Ben, like you said, handle it behind the scenes. Hey guys, I want out. Then if Andrew Berry says, well, we're not moving you, then at that point, yes, you can continue to have a conversation. The conversation would be, okay, you don't want to move me? That's fine. I'm going to go out here. I'm going to drop 20 sacks every season, and I'm going to make you pay me. You either pay me or move me. Take your pick, because you're not going to have your cake and eat it too. And I think that's also part of the conversation that's been out there. Obviously, there's rumors that Myles wants a new deal. He wants to be compensated fairly. Completely understand. But like you said, the NFL is a business. If I'm looking at this through a business lens, and I've got a guy who has put up double-digit sacks every year, he's been an all-pro, he's carried a defense, he's carried a city on his back. If I'm Andrew Berry and I'm Kevin Stefanski, I go to him and I say, hey, look, we know that when we did the Watson deal, it was not, we took a swing and we missed badly. Everybody would have, there were 10 teams that would have taken that swing. We took a swing, we missed, but we're trying to fix it. We're trying to rectify it. We've got all these draft picks now. We've got a bunch of draft capital. We can take a rookie at number 2. It might take a year or 2 to get him up to speed. We understand that you don't necessarily want to go through a rebuild, but it's going to be more of a reload. Just work with us. And then at that point, if Myles says, okay, well, I'll work with you, give me a new deal, the opus is on the front office to either say, prove it or give him a new deal. But I think both sides are in the wrong here. I think Myles is in the wrong for how he's approached this whole scenario, going out on Radio Row, going on publicly, putting everything on blast, because now he's damaged any value that he's had. And now the team won't move him because they're not going to get top dollar for him. But I think the team's also gone about it the wrong way, because either, you have a guy that's meant so much to your franchise, that's done so much for your franchise, that's proven it on the field, and he either A, asked to be in a contending place, or B, ask for a new deal, but then you said C, you're not getting either, pound sand and go play on your current deal. So I think that's where we kind of stand. And if I'm Andrew Berry, I think the conversation has to be either we have to move Myles now where we can get the most value for him, or we have to pay him. But just going forward on the current status quo, that's going to create a locker room that's going to, we've all seen it. We've all heard the stories of those guys that come in, they bring the entire locker room down. It creates that toxic culture. And then you get other guys that start saying, well, if they're doing that to him and he's an all pro, what are they going to do to me? And then what are they going to pay me? And then now you've created this entire culture of everybody wants out. It's going to start to turn on the coaching staff. And then, that's how coaching staffs get turned over. I'm with you. Kevin Stefanski isn't the problem here, but he needs to be part of the solution.
You mentioned it. I mean, Deshaun Watson and that contract, his health is a disaster. No one saw the health situation being what it was. But bigger than that, when I think of the Cleveland Browns, when I seeing you guys draft over the years, it's you guys go for it a lot, especially at the quarterback position.
Yep.
The Cleveland, you being a Cleveland fan, understanding the culture, understanding the pulse of the city, of the team. Bill, in your humble opinion, what is it about Cleveland that you think we got to get over this no matter who we get? Is there, because Detroit, they've kind of hit that curve to kind of say, okay, we've turned the corner. Was it Dan Campbell? I don't know. In your humble opinion, what is it about Cleveland you say, look, it's a good team. It's just we got to do this to be a consistent team?
Yep. And it's exactly that. For the longest time in Cleveland, it was 3-year cycles. First year, you get a new head coach and a new GM. Everything's nice and shiny and bright. Hey, we got this new head coach on the block. He was a great play caller. First year, you go 3-13, 3-14. Okay, go into free agency in the draft. You get some talent. Now you think you got a chance. Second year, you go 6-10. So you're like, okay, we're on the up and up. And then the third year, it's back to 3-13 because the team fell back because we didn't solve the quarterback position. The big thing that I implore fans to ask is to have patience. When you talked about it, Detroit, when Dan Campbell was, had 3 wins in that season, Detroit didn't fire him. They let him work through it. They said, okay, Dan, we're going to come to you. You've got to make some changes because, we if not, we have to have a conversation. But then they pushed through that and they changed that culture. This culture has been this way since 1999. It's been a 3 years and out. We haven't figured it out and we're done. You also see it. This front office has been more aggressive in adding talent because Andrew Berry came from Philadelphia under Howie Roseman, learned the ways of manipulating the cap, which one of the ways you can do that is to have an owner that has the cash influx that's willing to sign those checks. Jimmy Haslam has shown, hey, I will sign the check. You give me a valid business-based reason. And at the time, Deshaun Watson was a valid business-based reason. This was a guy that had thrown for 4,000 yards. This was a guy that when he was in Houston, he carried less than, subpar talented offense to a playoff spot. This was a guy that could change the face of the franchise. Now, did it end up that way? No, because obviously there was the health concerns. There was the playing concerns. There was a whole mess, and that's a whole nother episode by itself. But they took the swing. They were aggressive. This Cleveland Brown franchise has not been that way historically. Historically, they've been risk averse. They took Brandon Weeden in the first round because he was 27 years old and he was the old safe prospect. This Browns team doesn't do that anymore. They take the risks. So can we still fault them for that? I think absolutely not. But it comes to a head. How many swings am I going to give you before I see some results? And I think we may reach that tipping point this season, especially if Myles gets moved, they go quarterback early in the draft and it doesn't work out. And when I say work out, I'm not asking for, 10-7, 11-6 and a playoff berth. But if you take a rookie quarterback and you win 3 games again next year, we might be talking about Stefanski and Berry being out of a job. And I hate saying that because Stefanski, like you said, Ben, he is a hell of a coach. He is a coach that if we fired him today, he would have a job tomorrow. He would have a job probably by the end of the same business day. But at the same time, we have to understand as a coach, you have to get the most out of the talent around you. You have to be able to say, okay, I have a young rookie quarterback. how do I help him to succeed? And I think Stefanski can do that. I think he's assembled a staff this year in Tommy Rees, the OC, Bill Musgrave, the quarterback coach, Kevin Stefanski himself. There is a lot of offensive knowledge in that room that's going to help foster a culture for that rookie to succeed. But in order to foster that culture, you have to solve this problem. And I think with the combine coming up in a couple of weeks and all the GMs and talent evaluators will be here in Indianapolis, I think we're going to get some sort of resolution. Is that resolution paying Myles $40 million a year? Maybe. Is that resolution him getting moved? Maybe. But I think you can't continue on this same path. You have to make a choice one way or the other.
Before we switch over and kind of just deep dive into the Super Bowl analysis and kind of the game that we saw last night, I'll give you a couple of players that I'm pretty high on as a Panthers fan, but just in general, guys have been talked about pretty much a lot that are not some of the names you've already mentioned, and kind of get your thoughts on them. And then Ben, if you any other prospects that you want to bring up, or Bill, anybody else that you're really high on in the first round or two, and then we can transition to the Super Bowl. Respectively. Yeah. Well, the one guy I will bring up that you already mentioned is Mason Graham. I love Mason Graham. My Panthers could use him next to Derrick Brown. That would feed families in Charlotte, North Carolina, if Derrick Brown and Mason Graham ended up on the same line together. Oh my goodness, I'm salivating at that. But I'm going to skip past Mason Graham. You already talked about him. I just had to put that out there. All right, so here's the ones that I'm looking for. Tet McMillan from Arizona. Malachi Starks from Georgia. And then the two other, actually, I'll give you three. The two other Georgia players that people talk about, Jalen Walker and Mykel Williams. And then the guy from Marshall, Mike Green, that is kind of sneaking up draft boards. So, yeah, okay, there you go. Yeah, by your face. So, as a Panther fan, respectively, I would love I love Tet McMillan, but I think the Panthers need defensive line more. And as much as I love Tet McMillan, as long as he doesn't go to the Saints at 9, I'm okay with that. But I'm not sure what to think about a Jalen Walker, about a Mykel Williams. I mean, one of them reminds me of Trayvon Walker, which we're just now seeing the results in Jacksonville after like 3 years. Another one reminds me of it's like I don't know what to think as a fan of those two guys. And then Malachi Starks flat out just reminds me of Kyle Hamilton. That dude's a beast, and he could be that in the box safety and go and hit you in the mouth on every play. So, what are your thoughts on those guys? Where you have on your board and teams that might be good fits for those guys?
Yeah, so we'll start with Mike Green, obviously from Marshall, and this guy is a pure pass rusher level talent. And I mean, you see the rep that he had with Josh Connerly at the Senior Bowl, where that was a rep that was ran with hatred in that man's heart. Let me tell you. Yes, Connerly recovered after that, but I mean that's going to be on every highlight reel from now until draft day. The big thing about Mike Green, he's got every pass rush tool imaginable. He can win with speed to power. He can get around you. He can go through you, under you. The big concern I have for him is he does have smaller hands than you would like from a standard NFL pass rusher. He's got sub 9-inch hands, which the problem with that is obviously you're giving up that unnecessary leverage when you're trying to push in the run game. Same thing for his wingspan being a little bit less as well. So I have concerns about him in the run game, but if you're wanting a pure pass rusher on the edge, man, you can't get much better than Mike Green in this class. The next one, Jalen Walker, he's a fun one because he's a linebacker who has edge rushing capabilities, where he's an edge rusher that can play linebacker. He's kind of a little bit of a flex of both. He's my top overall linebacker prospect right now. Kind of reminds me a lot of Patrick Queen when he came out of LSU, just with a little bit more pass rush juice behind him. I think if you're going to draft Jalen Walker, it's with the expressive decision to play him at linebacker and throw him on some edge rushing plays. You know, we didn't really see him drop back a whole lot into coverage as a linebacker at Georgia, but that doesn't mean he can't do it. He has the athletic ability to move sideline to sideline and can absolutely 100% do it. I think you get better value putting him at linebacker and using him as an edge. And then Mykel Williams out of Georgia, probably one of the highest ceilings of any edge rusher in this class. He is one of those big boomer bust prospect type of guys. I mean, this is a guy that I believe won't even turn 21 until draft day. He's a young pup, and 6'5", 265. More than 30% of his career tackles resulted in a loss. This is a guy that knows how to get into the backfield and get there in a hurry and create problems. This is the Philadelphia Eagles syndrome. They saw what they did to Patrick Mahomes, made life tough for him. Mykel Williams' stock is going to go through the roof on that one. And Malachi Starks, he is a guy that I will admit I am not as high on. He is my safety 2.5 because there are two guys that I have with him. But that being said, before we go there, he's a guy that started off the season as the top safety on a lot of people's boards, and you can see it. There's a lot of high leverage games when you scroll up and down his tape. There's a lot of high pressure situations. He has the athletic ability to play multiple slots. You could play him as a deep safety. You could play him in the box. You could play him as a nickel corner. You could play him in the slot. You could do him in a lot of different things. The best thing that he does is when that deep ball is in the air, he knows where it's going to go before it even gets there. The second it leaves off the quarterback's hands, he's going to know. The big issues that I have is he bites on play action fakes too often for his own good. And part of that is he's trying to be aggressive and make a play, and I applaud that. But at some point you have to have that eye discipline to say, okay, I know that this scheme that they're running out of is a pure run scheme. I need to back off a little bit rather than trying to dive for it. But I think ultimately I could see him going in the first round. I could see him going to Carolina, and I could see him falling out of the first round altogether with how wide the variance is on him, just because the two other guys that I have at the top of the safety class, Xavier Watts from Notre Dame, true ball hawk, produced every single week in, week out, not as athletic as Malachi Starks, but he has the production. He has the skill set as a coverage guy. But the big one, Nick Emenwari from South Carolina, if you're not hip to Nick Emenwari's game, you got to get there quick. 6'3", 227, and he's going to blow the doors off of the combine when he tests. This is a guy that you could put at linebacker, you could put at safety, you could put at corner, you could put at the nickel, you could put in the slot, and he is what I like to call an Avengers level threat in the defensive backfield, because he's going to make plays athletically. He's got the size and the range to do it. He is what Kyle Hamilton is to Baltimore. That's what he was for South Carolina this season. I've had him as high as 18th. I could see him in Seattle with Mike McDonald again, getting his own version of Kyle Hamilton. But I think if you're Carolina, I think edge has to be the move. I think you could look at a Mykel Williams. You could look at a Mike Green. If you're wanting to go high potential and just take the big swing for the fence, Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M is another high potential guy. Same thing with Nick Scourton, 6'6", 280 pounds. Not 21 years old, so he's still even got some growing to do at 6'6", 280 pounds. But I think if your Carolina, edge has to be the move. And with how deep this wide receiver class is, you can come back in round 2 and get a very talented wide receiver. You could get an Xavier Restrepo from Miami, who lit up the Senior Bowl. You could get a Pat Bryant from Illinois, a very underrated vertical threat at receiver, even a Jack Besh from TCU. You could get that as well. So I think if you're Carolina, edge has to be on the docket at picks number 7 overall.
Ryan always coming with his great draft analysis. But speaking of threats, let's go to the best athletes on the field, the tight ends. When you look at Brock Bowers, rookie, first team All Pro, because people kept saying he's a twin. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the biggest guy, but super duper efficient. I want to talk about 3 prospects.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler Warren, obviously, I don't know if any tight end has ever gotten used. I am jealous of him. They let him run the ball, throw. They let him do everything but kick. But kick. Mason Taylor, the son of Jason Taylor, the nephew of Zach Thomas. And I think the most intriguing tight end in the draft got to be Harold Fanning Jr. because I ain't never seen stats like that. He's not the biggest guy, but obviously, the headline is going to be Tyler Warren, Mason Taylor going to come with the pedigree, Harold Fanning. How do you see those three guys transition into the National Football League, and which three do you think makes an impact sooner rather than later?
Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head. Tyler Warren, that they would let him do everything: run the ball, catch, throw the ball. I mean, they could have probably let him punt and kick field goals too, and he probably would have been darn good at it. When you're 6'6", 265 and you move in the way he does, it's like magic on tape. And he has really great hands. He gets in and out of routes very quickly, especially when you consider the fact that he hasn't been playing tight end full time very long. He's a converted quarterback. He's still got room to grow. And you said it, Mason Taylor out of LSU. This is a guy, he's got the NFL bloodlines, and you can see it. He's probably one of the best tight ends in this class at being able to block in line and as a receiving threat. He's one of the few guys. We see a lot of guys at the top of this class this year that really only can do one or the other. They're really good athletic pass catchers, or they're really good blockers, but they're not really both. He's able to do both. And my comparison for him from a stylistic point of view, from a play style point of view, it's Jason Witten when he was with the Dallas Cowboys. When you watch Mason Taylor, you see a lot of the same things that Jason Witten did in Dallas. He was that reliable security blanket level guy for Tony Romo. And I think Mason Taylor is going to be that for some NFL team. And you talked about it, Harold Fannin. I mean, this is a guy puts up video game numbers. The big question mark behind Harold Fannin is how is he going to be used at the NFL level? Because he's got the body size of a tight end, but he's a little undersized, was used in a little bit different ways. Some people have said he should be just a fullback full time. Some people have said, use him as a power slot wide receiver. His landing spot is going to be probably the most important of any tight end in this class, because he's going to have to be used pretty creatively when you're talking about him at the next level. Because he's the type of guy you can't just drop in and say, yep, you're a full-time tight end and have at it. We've seen guys that have come out that have been athletic, nightmares, or had special skill sets like Kyle Pitts in Atlanta, and they just tried to drop him in and say, yep, you're a classic old school tight end, and it doesn't work. So Harold Fannin is the type of guy that you have to sit there and say, okay, we're going to use him creatively. We're going to use him as some slot receiver. We're going to use him as a fullback. We're going to use him in some wildcat scenarios as the direct snap guy. One spot for him, Los Angeles Rams. Give Sean McVay. Yeah. Give Sean McVay a weapon like that.
Bill, you remember he went to Titans. You remember Chick Wozzy and coming out of Maryland? Like that's what Harold. When I see him, I go, undersized dude. Like, I don't like to compare anybody to Delanie Walker. Delanie Walker, San Francisco, was much different than Delanie Walker with the Titans because they used him. But when I see Harold Fanning first, when I see his numbers, I go, I mean, who is throwing to this dude? Like, he got like this top receiver type numbers, but then once again, the last time you're gonna be the best athlete on the field is when you leave Bowling Green. Once you step out there, these DNs, you're gonna have to put your hand in the dirt, sometime. But I think these creative tight ends, like a Harold Fanning, he's gonna have to go to places like, Sean McVay or San Francisco with a George Kittle that can show him, look, I'm the best all around tight end in football. I block better than I freaking catch passes, which to me is crazy. But I just think the tight end position is one now that, I think Kyle Pitts, I don't know how much longer he's going to be in Atlanta. I hope he's there forever. That's probably not going to happen. But the George Kittles of the world, the Travis Kelce's minus the Super Bowl, still getting it done. I think when you have the Brock Bowers, when you have a tight end, a guy that I love, David Njoku, still getting it done coming out of, I think he was 20 years old coming out of freaking Miami when he got drafted. Yep. These guys go to the right system, and they're not trying to make them something they're not. You talk about instant offense because, 70% of the passes, they going in between them hashes and them numbers, and that's what them tight ends, obviously, that's what they make their bet.
Yeah. Yep. Real quick before I hit the Super Bowl, just a quick aside, non-draft question. Is there any way that you think, Bill, that Ben's current number 2 quarterback, Kirk Cousins, makes his way to Cleveland with Kevin Stefanski, in Minnesota? They have the ties there. People have been, and Cleveland's not the only destination. I'm just saying, but that's one of them that they've talked about.
Yeah, no, it's one that's been thrown about there. Obviously, the destination of they were together in Minnesota. They had a really great year, while they were there. Kirk knows the offense. I think if you're going to go that route, that would be a route you would go if you're taking a quarterback high in this draft that you're confident is not going to be ready day one. Like if you're going to take Kirk Cousins, if you're going to say, okay, Kirk's coming from Atlanta, then that would be probably the top of round 2, pick 33. You take a Jalen Milroe. You take that swing on the high athletic trait guy and say, okay, Jalen, you've got a year to figure it out because we're going to have Kirk go out there, but we need you to be ready because obviously with the Achilles injury, we've seen what that did to Aaron Rodgers. And now, it may be the end for his career. Could it be the same for Kirk Cousins? Deshaun Watson has 2 Achilles injuries. That injury changes you as a quarterback fundamentally because obviously that Achilles, if you're not able to plant off of that back foot at the top of your drop, you're going to lose torque on the ball. You're going to lose accuracy and ball placement and things like that. So while I'm not opposed to it, I think if you're the Browns, you have to explore other avenues. Obviously, another one is Sam Darnold coming from Minnesota, that same style, but are you going to get the Sam Darnold in Minnesota? Or are you going to get the Sam Darnold that saw ghosts in New York? You don't know what you're getting there. So that's the one question that you have to have is what bite of the apple do you want to take and hope that it's not rotten in the core?
Well, 45 minutes on the draft. This was a great discussion. Bill, we'll transition now to the Super Bowl from last night, Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans, the Crescent City, where we saw the Philadelphia Eagles romp over the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes denying them a three-peat. 40 points scored by Philadelphia. Thought at one time it was going to be the biggest blowout, and then the Chiefs got some points there to make it a little closer. But 40-22 was their final score in the Super Bowl 59 last night. Gentlemen, I'm just going to give you the floor. What I think is really simple. Line of trenches on both sides of the ball won this game for Philadelphia. Their offensive line abused Kansas City and didn't allow Jalen Hurts to have plenty of time to throw. Saquon didn't need to have the best game. And on the other side, Jalen Carter, Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, Zach Bond, they had their way with this Kansas City Chiefs O-line. Cooper Jean became the second rookie ever to have a pick 6 in the Super Bowl, and it happened to be his birthday. So he had a great birthday, and he's a Super Bowl champion. So I think it was that simple, boys. Line of scrimmage won this game for the Eagles. Point blank in a story.
Vic Fangio won the game because he knew this. Vic Fangio said, look, everybody, listen, I love Spagnuolo. I love what he's done. I love how he does it. But people always say he blitzed a lot. You blitz a lot when the D-line, you blitz when your front four don't get there. Well, if you are the best D lineman for Philadelphia had 0 sacks. That's Jalen Carter. That's how good their D-line was last night. He wasn't. Now he's getting double and triple. I'm not saying he crazy. He calls, it's a crowd. But what I saw last night was this. They said, look, man, when you try to get cute, you lose. When you do when you do what it took to get there, you have a better shot of winning. Vic Fangio said, I'm gonna unleash my front four against their front, and we're gonna see, because I'm gonna keep saying this about Patrick Mahomes. He does things that no other quarterback is allowed to do or should do. On the pick to Deshaun, he threw back across his body. You don't roll to the right and throw back left. I mean, he was saying, Cooper, he was like, I know he's not gonna throw this. And he threw it. Now, when it works, we applaud it. When the no-look passes work, it's beautiful. But they don't always work, but they win the game, so we let it go. But when you lose, and I'm not placing it all on Patrick Mahomes, he does not block for himself. But Patrick Mahomes improvises a lot, and a lot of times it works. Sometimes he gets some home cooking for the refs, this and that. But if you cannot block Philly's front four, it's over. I don't care who you are. If you can't block them, they didn't do nothing special. Even on the pick to Brown, I mean, he's feeling pressure, trying to make a play. He just sat 2 picks. So I listen, my hat goes off to Philly for a lot of reasons. People kept saying, if we take Saquon away, they're one-dimensional. Well, that's the best one-dimensional. They got freaking Devonta Smith. They got freaking A.J. Brown, right? A.J. Brown came wide open on the shallow cross. You don't know where number 11 is? Number 11, to me, is the scariest player on the offense. The best player on the offense is Saquon, by a mile. But this was all about Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts did in this Super Bowl what he did the previous one. He outplayed Patrick Mahomes. He outplayed him the first time they played, but Kansas City won. And I think this was about Jalen Hurts because I'm gonna keep saying this. Myles Garrett is a once in a lifetime defensive end. He went number 1 overall, over 100 sacks. I think Josh Allen, the only second team All Pro to ever win MVP. Lamar Jackson is out of this world. Joe Burrow out of this world. But what you rather have? I'd rather have a regular season guys that's at the NFL honors, or I'd rather have efficiency at the quarterback position. I'm not going to be sexy with my stats, but guess what I'm going to do? I got the tush push. I got the brotherly shove, whatever they want to call it. I got Saquon, and I got a ring. And none of those guys, not only do they not have a ring, even though Joe Burrow's went to the Super Bowl, they may never go because now you got 2 guys to beat. It used to be you got to beat Patty Mahomes. Now you got to beat Jalen Hurts because now he beat the guy that beat him the first time. So to me, I think it's about Jalen Hurts. The fact that this man had a commercial queued up if he won. To me, I mean, it ain't LeBron now. I'm not comparing to that, but hey man, cue the commercial. He gonna get MVP because, like I said, and I'm gonna keep saying this. Joe Flacco won the Super Bowl with Baltimore. He's not an icon. Nick Foles won the Super Bowl with Philly. He got a statue. Trent Dilfer won the Super Bowl with the Bucks. He's not an icon. Jalen Hurts is an icon. He's going to get a statue in Philly. If they gave one to Nick Foles, who played in the playoffs, Jalen Hurts never have to worry about playing for a Philadelphia cheesesteak ever again in his freaking life. And I think that we don't like when the underdog wins it because it kills the narrative. He's not, quote, the franchise, quote, what he is for Philly. He's not what we prototypically say is the franchise quarterback. But what do you say, Bill? What do you say, Ryan Smitty, when the guy when it comes to the odds who's going to win the MVP, he wasn't first. He probably wasn't even second. Jalen Hurts won the MVP, and I love the Philadelphia defense. A rushing touchdown, 2 touchdown passes, 1 pick, which was kind of like a punt. He threw it out there. But I just say it's all about Jalen Hurts because, like I said, he done what AI didn't do. He done what Joel Embiid didn't do. He did what Nick Foles did, but Nick Foles had a hell of a team. And guess what he really did? Nick Foles dethroned a dynasty. Jalen Hurts just dethroned a freaking dynasty in Kansas City. Hey, man, and for the next 60-some days, he the man until they say he's not. To me, that's what stood out the most. Love Saquon and all those guys. Nick Sirianni. Jalen Hurts sitting there smoking whatever he's smoking on that Kansas City pack, whatever it was. Shout out to that man. I think he exiled a lot of demons, and to all the analysts in the world, we're gonna have to reevaluate, what we call a franchise QB or the face of the league, because he in Philly. It ain't like he in the NFC East. He just beat Patty Mahomes. No, they didn't beat Patty Mahomes. They took him to the woodshed. That was those are garbage touchdowns. You'll take it. But come on, man, they could have scored. The Super Bowl looked real similar to the NFC Championship game, except no Saquon. That's what it kind of looked like to me. You guys thought.
So you hit the nail on the head with Jalen Hurts. I go back to 5 years ago when Jalen Hurts was at the Senior Bowl and someone in the media asked him, hey, what are your thoughts about switching to running back? That chip has stuck with him ever since. People have said, oh, I'm just a quarterback. I'm just a running quarterback who can throw it a little bit. Now, what happened last night was Kansas City said, okay, we're going to stop Saquon. Saquon's ran for over 2,000 yards this season. We're going to stop Saquon. Jalen Hurts, it's your turn to beat us. And Jalen Hurts did exactly that. He went out there and he played a masterful game. He knew when to throw it to A.J. Brown, to Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, but then he also knew when to run it. There were a few plays where you watched that sea of offensive line just open up and Jalen Hurts run right down the middle of the field for 10, 15 yards consistently. The other side, if Jalen Hurts didn't get Super Bowl MVP, it should have went to Vic Fangio because he called a game. They did not blitz one single time last night.
That's hard to believe.
Hard to believe. They sent 4 all night long. And Vic Fangio was sitting on that sideline saying, they just going to let me, okay. Because if you can get pressure with just sending 4, why would you ever blitz? And I think if you're Kansas City, you have some serious concerns about this dynasty now because you've got a lot of free agents.
Tell the listeners what you were telling me kind of off air before. You have them, dare I say, taking a huge step back next season, maybe even missing the playoffs.
Yeah, so we talked about it before we went on the air tonight. I have Kansas City taking a potential step back, could be the 3-4 seed. There's a possibility they don't win the division next year because now you have a blueprint of how to beat them. Yes, and Ben talked about it. When Patrick Mahomes makes those flashy plays and they work, we applaud it. But when they don't work, you see what happens. And that's what happened last night, especially when you get down early. This Kansas City team is not built to play from behind. This Kansas City team is not built to play from behind. They're built to play with a lead and use like Isaiah Pacheco as a bruiser running back to wear you down. When they got down 10-0 early, the conception was, oh, Patrick Mahomes is going to make those flashy plays and he's going to get them back in the game. It never happened. That train never came because this team's not built that way. This team, I believe, if you take all of their single score victories and reversed the outcome, they would have picked top 3 in the draft. They are a team, they found ways to win, and that's an applaud against Andy Reid and this coaching staff. They went out there and they found ways to win. But when you're playing a team like Philadelphia that has talent up and down that defensive line and talent up and down that roster as a whole, you can't just go out there and find a way to win. You have to find a way to be better. And that's what Kansas City cannot do. And going into next year, Travis Kelce's getting older. Is this his last ride? You've got all the free agents. Patrick Mahomes' deal is starting to go up in cost. They're going to have to restructure. They're going to have to move money around to pay him. So now we're starting to see that kind of, wear down effect. And also when you get to the top of the mountain and you get just thrashed like they did, we talk about the Super Bowl winners and the Super Bowl hangover. I wouldn't be surprised if Kansas City has a Super Bowl hangover next year and that doubt creeps in of, hey, Philly just destroyed us. Well, what happens when we play the Chargers and they do the same thing? What happens when we play the Raiders and they come out and they run it down our throats for 60 minutes and get after us when Max Crosby does the same thing to the center of our offensive line? So I would not be shocked if Kansas City took a major step back next season because this is a team that, if they had won the three-peat, they would have been talked about as one of the greatest dynasties of all time, which is understandable. You win 3 straight Super Bowls, you're going to be there. But this year's Kansas City team was not the same one that we've been accustomed to seeing. This is a Kansas City team that kind of just coasted and just said, hey, we're Kansas City and we're going to go out there and we're going to find a way to win. But when you go up against a buzzsaw like Philadelphia that says, oh, you're going to find a way to win, good luck. We're going to send our best 4 at you. Figure it out. You see what happens. I mean, by the time we went to halftime, it was 24-0 and all the air was sucked out of that Kansas City line. And I can only imagine what that locker room was feeling at halftime. There's no adjustments you can make when you're down 24-0 on the biggest stage in the world to get yourself back in that game mentally.
Smitty. And from a former player standpoint, when you go into the locker room, halftime adjustments, they're asking questions, and the answer is no. Hey man, are they doing something different? No. Are they sending anybody? No. Are they running games? No. They're literally just rushing. They're not doing tackle. They're not doing anything. Vic Fangio said, "Look, fellas, listen to me. You know what makes my life easy? What? Having y'all. You know what makes my life hard? What? Having to call these. When people say these exotic blitzes, you do these things because your front. If your front row is dominant, your back seven. I'm not saying they got to be elite, but they don't have to be elite. Now I'm not now the back seven for when they dropping 7 for Philly, they are elite, but guys can just play because listen, I'm dropping 7 and I got Darius Slade. I mean, who 34, 35 years old. I got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who the last time they went to the Super Bowl, he was controlling the back end. I got 2 rookies starting that you forget they're rookies because one took it to the house. My freaking all-pro linebacker signed a 1-year deal. He was here to really play special teams. He's a freaking first-team all-pro. The linebacker that I drafted, the Kobe Dean, he's hurt. I'm telling you, Vic Fangio said, look, I'm going to put on a clinic today. If they're better than me, fine. But I think the thing about Kansas City is what you said, Bill, and what you kept saying all year, Smitty, we forget how they won. Remember? Block field goal against Denver. Your Panthers should have beat them. My Falcons should have beat them. And what happens is when they win, they brush it under the rug. But when you go up against a team that's if not as good as you, maybe better than you, mistakes are how you lose. And like I said, you took away the best running back in football away from Philly, and it didn't matter. I mean, we took Saquon away. Yeah, but who's going to block Sweat? You know, Carter, the most consistent player coming in on defense on the D-line was Nolan Smith. He had like a sack or 2 sacks every game. He didn't even have a sack last night. That's how good the D-line was. And I was just in awe of the fact that people kept saying, oh, they're down 24-0. We drunk the Kansas City Kool-Aid of they got Patrick Mahomes, they're going to find a way. Well, who they going to run out there? I mean, DeAndre Hopkins was wide open right before the half, dropped it. Once he couldn't find a rhythm, I'm going to keep saying this about Kansas City. If number 87 and number 15 are not on the same page, the whole offense just struggled because Xavier Worthy, I love the fact that he's fast, but if he ain't catching deep balls, you don't even know he's out there. Not Juju Smith-Schuster, the last time I saw him play meaningful football, he was doing TikTok and he was playing for Pittsburgh. I just like I said, it is one game. It is one game. We just expect Patty Mahomes to do it, but like I said, Chris Jones, arguably the premier, he's the best interior. He had the highest grade rushing passer from the D tackle position. He was non-existent. You didn't even see him. So as much as we want to talk about what Kansas City O-line didn't do, what Philly's O-line did do, the Kansas City defensive line, outside of stopping the run, they created holes. It was a clinic, man. I think when it comes to football, when you saying, hey man, what's the best game plan we can have? Just line up and play. All that cute stuff is out the window. I mean, you got McDuffie one-on-one against A.J. Brown. Do you think that that's a good game? And I love McDuffie, but that's a mutant over there at receiver now. I mean, so yeah. I just, for one night, everything went right for Philly. Everything went wrong for Kansas City. And the only reason why the only reason why Philly didn't score 50 is because, Kenny Pickett got to play. That's the only reason why they didn't score even more. But, hey, for one night, man, Nick Sirianni is about to break the bank. They're going to give him a new deal, and whatever he wants, he's going to get. Roseman, that GM, he did.
I was going to go into that really quickly. Yeah, before we move on. Yeah, Howie Roseman, you got to give him all the credit in the world. He traded for A.J. Brown. He did sign Saquon Barkley when the running back market looked like it was drying up. Just 4 players left from this 2017 team. 2 of those were specialists with them. Different quarterback, different coach. And, they had first-year coordinators as well. Bill, you mentioned this earlier. Jalen Hurts dismissed as a pro prospect. He was benched in college, but he kept his head down and he kept going. And that is a great lesson for the kids out there who want to succeed in the NFL. And the other big takeaway is the fundamentals of football are blocking and tackling. And the Chiefs didn't do that very well last night, and the Eagles did it much better. Boys, that's really the game was really a clinic, like you said, Ben. It was really that simple. Well, I want to discuss real quickly before I get into the our normal headlines, Ben, for the week. Bill, if you want to stick around, you can. But was there any other topics that you kind of wanted to hit on before we let you go?
Yeah, no, I think, like we always talked about tonight, the question mark is, how do I get to the Super Bowl? How do the Cleveland Browns get to the Super Bowl, right? How do they emulate that success? The big things you got to do, you got to identify your guy at quarterback. Kansas City did that. They got Mahomes. Philadelphia did that. They got Jalen Hurts. You got to build through the trenches. Look at that Philadelphia offensive line. Every single one of them drafted by Howie Roseman, except for one in Mekhi Becton that they signed, and they signed him as a reclamation deal.
Yeah.
This was a guy that was fully expected to be cast off out of the league and done. And Howie Roseman said, no, I see something in this man. Bring him in. Same thing on defense. They went after it and they said, hey, defensively, we know what our guys are going to do. We know how they're going to get there. Let's go get our guys regardless of what the value says. So if you're an NFL GM, one of the other 30, and you're watching Philadelphia, you're saying, hey, I can emulate that. I can have conviction. I can go get my guy. Obviously, it helps when you're a cap wizard like Howie Roseman is, because,
Right.
being able to get Saquon Barkley at 1% of your team's cap is just outlandishly crazy when you think about it.
Yes.
Like anybody who's able to get Saquon Barkley at 1% of your team's budget just deserves executive of the year right off the top of the head. But no, I think we're going to start to see the pendulum kind of swing away from Kansas City because of how well Philadelphia is built. And I wouldn't be shocked to see Philadelphia back here next year.
Bill, where can we find your work? Where can people find your mock drafts and all the good things that you're doing? Tell us where to find it, and anything you want to highlight and things that you're kind of coming out with soon.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find a lot of my content over on X at Spark Scouting. That's where pretty much all of my content goes. A lot of my other content will be at TWSN.net. That's the Wrightway Sports Network. I actually just dropped a Rebuilding the Browns article tonight where I take them all the way from free agency through final roster cuts in the summer and what that roster looks like as far as how I would rebuild it. I've also got some quarterback comparisons. My pre-combine positional rankings will be out in the next couple of weeks. I will be at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, so if you're out and about there, feel free to come up, say hi, let's talk some shop. But yeah, it was really fun being on with you guys tonight, to be able to talk some ball with you guys for a little bit over an hour. And I appreciate you having me on, and I can't wait to do it again.
Hey, Bill, man, make sure, man, if you get a chance to run into Jameis Winston, I mean, whatever he lacks as a football player, he definitely makes up as a teammate and a freaking human being. I mean, you can't root for a guy like Jameis Winston at this point of your life. You don't like football. You just don't, because to see him run out in the snow and to see him look up in the air when she's there, it's like Jameis Winston is living a freaking dream. I do like the fact that when he had Saquon, at the Super Bowl, hey man, you gonna hire me? He said the Giants need a quarterback. If he can still laugh at himself, man, you root for guys like that.
Absolutely. No, I agree 100%. Definitely. Hopefully I'll run into him at the NFL Combine. That'd be a fun time to have.
Appreciate you coming on, Bill, man.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on, Bill. I will let you know if we make it out to the Combine. That's still TBD on that, so I'll let you know if we make it out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you guys having me on, and have a great night, and can't wait to do it again next time.
Yes,
all right.
Sir.
Yep. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Well, Ben, that was Mr. Bill Sparks. We went a little longer in the draft than I had planned to, but
this is our show. We go as long as we want to go. We go, Smitty. We go to two things happen. No, three things gonna happen. Either one of your wife say, "Get the hell off, Smitty." My wife say, "Get the hell off," or your little one say, "Daddy." So if that ain't happening, we 3-0 right now. We good. We good.
Yeah. Last two topics for the night, and here on episode 26, winning the division. Real quickly, Sterling Sharp, Eric Allen, Jared Allen, and Antonio Gates all got into the Hall of Fame. What are your thoughts on those four inductees? We saw, Adam Vinatieri, Luke Kuechly, and Willie Anderson, the three that just missed the cut. They finished in the top 7. So those three will be finalists next year automatically if people didn't quite get what that meant. So by finishing in the top 7 but not getting in, they will automatically be at the front of the line, if you will, next year. Still may not get in, but they're automatically finalists next year. When guys like Drew Brees, Larry Fitzgerald, and some other guys are first ballots. But before that, digging in, your thoughts on them and their enshrinements. And then these new rules that I think got passed this year that I'm personally not a big fan of, but I also understand it because it is the Hall of Fame. It's not the Hall of Very Good.
Well, I think, the thing about the rules is Deion Sanders said it the best. He said, listen, man, because they was asking about the Hall of Fame some years back. He said, look, we can't just be letting everybody in. He said, because just like the Hall of Fame means the Hall of Game, but that means my game spoke volumes. And there's a lot of guys that are very, very good. as far as like the inductees, Eric Allen, big fan of his, man. 54 career interceptions, long overdue. Antonio Gates has the most receiving touchdowns by a tight end. He's the all-time leader in catches, yards, and touchdowns for the Chargers, and he was undrafted. He's an undrafted free agent in 2003. Jared Allen, finally, because here's the thing about Jared Allen. Nobody saw him. Shout out to the 04 draft class, by the way. I did not see Jared Allen. I knew he was good. I did not see him being like that. I mean, and obviously everybody knows he's not your typical defensive end as far as he's not real flashy as far as his game. He was built to run that. I mean, let's run that loop. I'm happy for Jared Allen because, you know, he's the type of guy that he going to say the right things, but you knew he wanted to get in. But, I mean, the highlight got to be Sterling Sharp. 7 seasons, 3-time first-team All-Pro. I think a 2-time second-team All-Pro. 65 career touchdowns. His numbers for 7 years were comparable to Jerry Rice when they was in the league together. And shout out to Shannon Sharp, who got a chance to tell his brother, welcome to the class of 2025. The first brothers to be inducted to the Hall of Fame. You know the man is going to be in it. You know the Watts are eventually going to be in it. But Smitty, I can only imagine. Listen, they're from Glenville, Georgia, which is not too far from where my daddy's from in Vidalia, Georgia. Country boys like myself. Shannon Sharp is the reason why I wore number 84. Sterling Sharp wore first, but I saw Shannon obviously more than I saw Sterling. I can only imagine what it's like because Sterling Sharp had no clue. Walks in the house, see the camera, but you know, my brother's on TV, so he gonna have cameras around him sometimes. The gold jacket didn't give it away. And shout out to LaDainian Tomlinson, the greatest Charger there is. You know, Faust and company and Kellen Winslow. He got a chance to tell Antonio Gates, welcome to the Hall. And I think that's what makes it even more special when a guy you play with. Listen, basically when I was in the National Football League, I had to play against, LaDainian Tomlinson. They had a bum at quarterback named, Phillip Rivers. They had a bum at defensive end named Sean Merriman. They had a tight end named Antonio. How are we supposed to beat them? This is their team. They had a scrub, and I'm saying this facetiously. I don't know. They had a bum at cornerback named Antonio Cromartie. This is their team. Anyway, shout out to all the inductees. And like I said, just because you didn't get in first ballot like an Eli, you know what I'm saying, like a Luke Kuechly, it doesn't mean you're not going to get in because people say, well, Luke Kuechly, Luke Kuechly was him. Like, what? But shout out to all the inductees. I'm happy for Sterling. I'm happy for Eric. I'm happy for Jared Allen, and company. I'm happy for Antonio Gates. Because like I said, Smitty, let's be honest now. And I'm not questioning nobody's resume. At a certain point, didn't it seem like we were just letting a whole bunch of people in? And everybody was worthy, but they're trying to make it more, prestigious. It is the Hall of Fame and not the Hall of Very Good. Shout out to the 2025 inductees.
Yeah. You make a good point on that for sure. Let's get into the headlines as we close out just from this week and around the NFL. We talked about some of these already. The Super Bowl, 126 million, most watched ever. Wow. 3 million more than last year. Ken Dorsey expected to join the Cowboys staff as a offensive analyst. That just broke a little bit ago. Jed York, 49ers owner, says they will do everything they can to extend Brock Purdy.
Well, they got to do it, but when the owner got to come out and say something, that means they're kind of weary, but they got to do it.
We mentioned Aaron Rodgers unlikely to return to the Jets in 2025, so it looks like the Jets are seeking another starting quarterback. And the the Chiefs three-peat talk fired up the Eagles, leading to their demolition of the Chiefs last night.
As it should. I mean, Aaron Rodgers not going to be a Jet. Well, what are we bringing him back to do, Smitty? Like, no, seriously. To add to it, right now he's stat compiler. He's trying to see how many more touchdown passes he can get. Hall of Famer, but come on, man. Aaron Glenn wants to start with a quarterback that he drafts, not a quarterback that's been in the NFL for a long time.
I didn't mention Debo. Did you have anything on him? You mentioned him earlier.
I will say this about Debo. I know that Debo was using Radio Row to kind of like talk about him won't asking for a trade.
Right, kind of like the Myles Garrett. Yep.
But let me tell you something about Debo, though. Debo ain't like a Myles Garrett, though, Smitty. Now, he's a slot guy. And I mean this respect. He has a unique skill set that I think there's only one other team that can utilize him the way that he needs to be used. And that would be Sean McVay and the Rams, because he's in the backfield. He's a slot guy. He had an outlier season to be a first-team All-Pro when he was his contract, yeah. But some big drops. Hasn't really been the same player since he got that big deal. And like I said, somebody could definitely utilize the services because he does make his money in the slot. But as far as like his best years are definitely behind him, because where he's going, they're going to just use him at the receiver position. We'll see where he ends up. We'll see. Ricky Pierce not you, so we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, I'll take Debo on the Panthers from South Carolina.
I'll wait with Smitty, and I was waiting for Smitty like, listen, he come over to Carolina. Yo, no matter of fact, Debo, listen, even though y'all, I want to say y'all different eras, call Jadeveon Clowney. No, it's him and JC. No, him and JC Horn different eras too. Call JC, call Jadeveon, tell him, hey man, Charlotte's a nice city, baby.
Xavier Legette.
Xavier Legette. Jadeveon Clowney.
He and Debo are boys. They know each other.
I'm just saying, man. Listen, and Xavier Legette said he got some fresh coon, for you, for you, Debo. I know he was giving coon or whatever through the whole locker room, and they was eating it. I would have said, Xavier, I love you. I'm not eating that. I love you, but
did you see the did you see the Cam Newton news today?
You talking about what he said about 2011?
Yeah,
Smitty, and I'm happy. Listen, I'm happy that you brought. Let me.
Steve Smith had a response to this. Charles Johnson, former defensive end for the Panthers, had a response to this. And I get it. People are going to say, "Well, that wasn't the clip. That wasn't exactly what he said." He could have said something a little bit more nicer. It wasn't exactly what he said, but as a former player, again, I didn't play in the NFL, so go ahead. This was your quarterback.
I didn't like it for a lot of reasons. Here's the thing. Okay. We are podcasters ourselves, so I'm not trying to come at nobody's podcast. He's on Travis Hunter's podcast, and they just talking like we talking football, talking life. Obviously, Travis Hunter is near and dear to Cam Newton. He was on his 7-on-7 team. Yep. So they go way back. That's how I discovered who Travis Hunter was, watching him. But you got to be careful about what you say, Cam. Let me tell you why. Listen, let me tell you why. Once you say it, you can't unsay it, and then interpretation will lead the conversation. It's going to lead it. Because like you say, Smitty, when you say that's not exactly what he said or that's not exactly what he meant, that's the love you have for Cam. And I get it, and I respect it. But once you use words like quit and losers, and they ain't, it makes it, yes, Cam won. Listen, Cam first two games, he went over 400 yards. Back-to-back games. I think his first game was against Arizona, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Steve Smith cooked a rookie named Patrick Peterson.
Yeah, and here's my thing, right? When we fought, listen, the whole notion of, listen, the farther away I get from the game, the better I was. The farther away I get, the better I was. Here's the thing about Cam is undeniable the truth. MVP, Super Bowl, NFC champion, went to the Super Bowl. We get it. Heisman, we get it. But when you start doing that, right, you talking about everybody in that locker room, including the Steve Smith, right, including the Greg Olsen, including the Julius Peppers, right? You had some boys in that locker room. And here's the thing. I don't like it when players try to make it seem as if they want it more than the current crop. I'm bringing something different to the table than them. I want to win more than them. That is not true. And that's the part about when it comes to Cam does a hell of a job with 4th and 1, with Freaky Fridays, what he does on First Take. I am not questioning Cam's talent, both away from the game and when he had, but Cam need to watch it because you don't want to create problems where there aren't any, because you don't want to create villains. Because let me tell you who really ain't saying what he really want to say. Steve Smith Sr. is not the one to mince words. He gonna say what he feels. And even him being a part of the media, he's learned I can't say everything. But when you provoke him, you talk about poking a bear. That's the smallest grizzly bear you ever seen, but he's a Steve Smith Sr. is him. And I think that's the thing is, Smitty, me and you, listen, we co-host, we own this show, we co-host. It is my job and my obligation and, my responsibility to protect you in any way I can, whether it's on this camera or off this camera. If somebody says something to me about you, I'm saying, look, man, you don't know. And we co-host on this show. Former teammates don't do that. You don't do that. I know people who cannot stand each other, but you have a conversation. Hey man, we got podcasts, we got these avenues. I didn't like it, Smitty, because Cam doesn't seem to be a sensationalized media type person, but sometimes he does. Like when he says, I wouldn't trade my MVP, I don't believe that. When Cam Newton walked in the Bank of America Stadium and he didn't see his pictures up, and he asked his son, Daddy, where you at? Cam is pissed about something. And I don't know what it is. But don't throw your teammates under the bus. Because here's the thing. It's way more of them than it is of you. And you grouping them all together. And I'm not saying they're gonna do that. But you remember Charles Johnson, you talk about, you talk about Steve Smith or whoever come. Don't do that, Cam, for a lot of reasons, but the biggest reason is respect your teammates, man. Respect how hard they work. Because when I saw it, I'm like, a bunch of look. Because they went 2-14 the year before. Yeah, okay. They got you. And you actually changed the whole dynamic of the franchise. But, Smitty, I got to ask you this. When you first saw it, I see how you feeling now, but when you first seen it, did you go, Cam? Like, what were your first thoughts when you saw it?
My thoughts were... Cam, did you step in it a little bit, buddy? Are you stepping in it a little bit? I mean, okay. And I'll quote Jeff Schwartz, former Oregon Duck, 7th round draft pick of the Carolina Panthers, who played with Cam Newton and a bunch of these boys. He's responding to someone who asked him his opinion regarding the Cam Newton. Okay. Like you said, Panthers went 2-14. But as he points out, the core of that roster went 12-4 2 years beforehand. It may be a tad bit more nuanced than a bunch of losers who can't prepare. And then he gave context. Cam came into a locker room with a Hall of Fame receiver. Oh, that'd be Steve Smith.
Yep.
Two offensive linemen that were pretty good. Jordan Groves, Travell Wharton. Two running backs, D'Angelo Williams, Jonathan Stewart, who either made a Pro Bowl or an All-Pro. Two linebackers who were All-Pros in their careers. That would be Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis. And they had other high-level contributors like a Charles Johnson, like a Chris Gamble, etc. And as he goes on to say, again, this is Jeff Schwartz, the debate isn't whether Cam was the savior. The question is whether the 2010 team was the losers who didn't know how to prepare. That's what he said. Do you think that's true? And that 2010 team that went 2-14.
Let me say this. While I love how eloquently he put that, I'm not listening. Let me tell you something. You cannot, make the word losers sound good. Think about this, Smitty. Okay, let's just take it away from sports for a second. And somebody's talking about you or me. They say, oh, they losers. Oh, we're going to go, yes. But that's not a compliment. That's never a compliment. If somebody's calling you a loser, that means they think they're here and you're there. No. Because how many of those guys was on that 2015 team? A lot of them, right? Retained a lot of those that went 15-1. So all of a sudden, we learned how to win. You're talking about Thomas Davis, who had 3 straight ACLs. Mm-hmm. Are you? Look, Cam, you better be careful with that stuff, man, because I think over time, right? You know how no one really knows anybody. You get glimpses of us if you play sports, whatever you do, if you're in the limelight. When Cam does stuff like that, not that it matters, you open up the floodgates for people to have to because when somebody trying to come and like speak up on your behalf, they trying to unmuddy the waters, right? They trying to say, I think he meant this. No, he meant what he said. And he shouldn't. Now, do I think he's going to come out of it? Yes. Because guess what? He's a national analyst. This stuff will end up being national news sports-wise. And like I said, Steve Smith had great career. Steve Smith should be a Hall of Famer. Because of Cam Newton, Steve Smith is not the greatest Panther, but he's right there. Cam is the greatest. I think it's Cam, Steve, Julius Peppers, Luke Kuechly, in that order. Greg goes in, but don't do that. Because here's the thing. Do you know how much Steve Smith used to not say about Cam? Now, he would say little stuff when he was there, but he wouldn't say it, Smitty. Now, you're going to have people say, all right, dude. Because Cam, I don't like it with Families Feud. I ain't with that. Because this is what you do. You do that off camera. Once they said, oh, you tell Travis, hey man, we need to edit that out. What? Don't put that on there. Why? Don't. Cam is too seasoned in this media space. Come on. And Travis Hunter don't want, because they're gonna say Travis Hunter podcast. Hey dude, don't come on my podcast to, you know what I'm saying? So Cam is a grown man. He gonna do what he want to do. He don't listen to me. That's fine. But I just think that I played for the Bucks. I played for the Raiders. I played for the Titans. I played for Florida. I played for Butler High School. I played with a lot of players, coaches, and teammates. I'm never, ever gonna say anything but what is complimentary about them. It don't matter how my personal feelings. I keep that to me. I tell that to my wife because she don't know what the hell I'm talking about. No, when she's like, who? What? She don't know. But Smitty, this is why I rub you the wrong way, because you say, Cam, I want to be on your side. I want to root for you. But when you do stuff like that, you're giving me a glimpse of how you really saw things, even if it's a sound bite. I'm pretty sure to go away as long as Cam do damage control. Because you don't want to.
That's what we're going to see. That's what we're going to see later this week. We'll see what happens with Cam. Hopefully he and Steve and can hash it out, man to man, off camera. They can have a little phone conversation. We'll see what happens there. I'm sure he's gonna, on his Funky Friday or his next 4th and 1 video, he's gonna come out and he'll talk about this.
He better.
No, he will. He will.
Well, he's in the line. If he understands branding, which he does, if he understands, damage control, which he does, publishing, public image, public perception. In the words of Chris Rock, he say, listen, the people with the most get to say the least, and the people with the least get to say the most. Well, Cam, you's a have got, not a have not. Do the right thing, because once again, it ain't Julius Peppers, it ain't Thomas Davis, it's Steve Smith Sr. Because guess what? If he come out and say something, who gonna say something? Steve, you remember Steve Smith and Jerry Jeudy on Monday night? You remember that? Well, Jerry Jeudy gonna do. Listen, Jerry Jeudy, he took off his helmet. He ain't come up to him though. He did all that. He was selling wolf tickets. That's all he was doing. I'm just saying, Steve. I'm not trying to have them two going against each other, but Cam better than that, man. When I saw it, I thought it was a joke. I was like, is this spam? Is this with it? Oh, he really said, oh, come on.
I want to end the podcast on a more positive note. We don't have to end it on that particular headline. Philadelphia Eagles are your Super Bowl champions, winning the division, episode 26. Fly, Eagles, fly, as they say up there in Philadelphia. But Ben, let me get your prediction going out the door. 2025 NFL season. We'll learn in a few months' time the schedule, all that. We'll do that later. I'll read you the official home teams that Philadelphia will be playing in 2025, and you tell me what is the best matchup for the NFL to put on Thursday night to open up the 2025 season. Real quick, right out the door. You got the Dallas Cowboys, New York Giants, Washington Commanders, and their division. Chicago Bears, the Denver Broncos, the Las Vegas Raiders, the LA Rams, and the Detroit Lions.
I want Detroit.
I agree.
I want, and if I can't get Detroit, I want the Rams. Listen, because I want to get this started early. I don't like that. Nothing against these other teams. I don't want. Now,
you think they put the Commanders on there versus the Eagles?
If they gave the Commanders, I can see that. But listen, give me Detroit. The Detroit, the Rams, the Commanders, or the Cowboys. Because the Cowboys they're gonna sell tickets, they're gonna get viewership. But give me Detroit, man. Let's get it started right now. We ain't running from nobody. Let's do it right now. Now, if you want to get it spicy for real, let's have a Super Bowl rematch. If you want, let's do that. I don't know if they play Kansas City. Let's do that.
They don't. No.
Oh, okay, well, give me Detroit. Because remember, here's the thing. Remember 2 years ago, who beat Kansas City the first game of the year? That would be Detroit.
Yeah.
Remember? So give me Detroit for give me Detroit 1, it's a Rams 2. And if Jaden Daniels want to prove that, man, I'm not a 1-year wonder, let's do it, baby. Because guess what? The Eagles gonna be even better, man. Because now they playing with a purpose. What did Jalen Hurts say? I had a plan well before y'all had an opinion, or I had a purpose well before y'all had an opinion. So let's do it, man. Let's do it. Shout out to Jalen Hurts though, because Jalen Hurts represents more NFL players because he's a superstar because of what he does, not a superstar in a sense because he's the media darling. But guess what? You win in Philly, that's forever. He's an icon. Listen, I'm calling for the commercial right now. Nick Foles, Jalen Hurts, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes. Y'all figure it out. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Well, this is where we're going to end episode number 26 of Winning the Division, or Philadelphia Eagles 59 Super 59 champions in New Orleans over Kansas City. And 2024 season is in the books. But winning the division is not in the books because we're going to keep it going. Episode 27 will be next week.
We ain't going nowhere.
We ain't going nowhere as we preview. We'll start the offseason next week, episode 27. But for episode 26, rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Find us on the Keep Pounding Podcast Network, Fans First Sports Network. Find us on YouTube at Tobacco Sports Radio. And listen, let us know your questions, your comments, your reviews. Give us a like, whatever you want to do. We want to continue to feed you guys content. We love doing this for you. And we're going to get guests on. We'll continue to bring guys like Bill as the draft gets closer these next 2 months. Who does your team want? Who do you want your team to select in the draft? And we'll cover everything else in between. We'll do the headlines. We'll do some overreactions. We'll just make up some random segments because that's what the off season's for. You got to fill some airtime. You got to fill some segments in the off season. Because now that the football's done for 7 weeks, we got a bunch of we got a bunch of crazy off season topics to discuss, and we'll be here with you every step of the way. So for Ben Troupe, I am Ryan Smith. This is Winning the Division, episode number 26. We'll see you next time.
Let's do it.